Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414. That is 4 times more. How the fuck? How?
Welcome to The Right Angle. Let's get into it. So, one of the biggest reasons Trump won in 2024 was due to inflationary programs that the Democrats created. You can also throw in immigration in there. You can throw in government corruption. You can throw in a whole host of other things, but those are things we can get to later. And during the last administration, we actually also saw, related to immigration, about 30 million illegals added to our neighborhoods. The official books say 10 million, but I think those numbers are triple of what that is, just based upon some things I've been seeing. We also saw nearly $6 trillion added to the economy. This is the government printing money, basically. And whether it was the Inflation Reduction Act, or as I call it, the Inflation Guaranteed Act, or the American Recovery Act, as Trump calls the Green New Scam, we saw inflation over the last 4 years skyrocket. It's important to know how we got there so we can fix the problem. So let's drive it home and let's look at one example of how the inflation that we saw in our everyday lives really transcribed and presented itself in our realities.
I feel like I'm gonna be sick. I just looked through my Walmart history, and I found this Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries. 45 items cost $126. A whole month of groceries just for me, basically. But I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414. That is 4 times more. How the fuck? How? What?
So just like this guy, just like many other people all around the country, you saw everything go up in your area. You saw how everyday items cost just so much, and your earnings weren't keeping up with the changes because your wages were staying stagnant. So, and the wages were staying stagnant because we added 30 million new individuals into our country, where the corporations don't have to pay as much as you deserve because they're paying third world indentured servitude prices to these people who come from other countries. So on one hand, you have the government printing money like crazy, so they're costing you there. And on the other hand, you have them letting in millions of people who are stealing our resources. And it's not because they are thieves, it's because it's just the truth, right? So resources like housing, which translates to higher rents because there's more demand and less supply. Higher vehicle accidents for people who don't know our laws and our roads and how to drive, just to be brutally honest, which drove up insurance costs, higher health costs, and longer wait times because the third world brought all manner of diseases here, and they fill up the wait rooms, they fill up the appointments, and there's not enough doctors to go around. Actually, right now in Kansas, there's a tuberculosis outbreak going on due to illegals there. And yes, tuberculosis was eradicated in the United States, but it's still prevalent in the third world with no vetting of all these people that came to our nation. And then we have all these health crises. And that's just, unfortunately, one of many. Oh, and by the way, it was recently reported that in 2024, the U.S. government under Biden just lost $1 trillion. I'm not 1 million, not 1 billion, $1 trillion, $1,000 billion they lost. And just let that sink in. Your government doesn't know where $1 trillion is. So you can throw in incompetence in there as well for these people. And I like this video from Thomas Massey. So let's hear how he breaks things down so we can understand inflation in general terms.
This is what happens when you have a quantity of something and then you add more to it. This is dilution. The principle is so simple that a child can understand. And you can create this little science project at home Sorry, you can have your tea back. Okay. But the principle is called dilution. And when you print $5 trillion and you put it into the economy, you have diluted the value of the money. So for instance, if you had a minimum wage at some amount and somebody was making minimum wage and they were still making minimum wage after this money was printed, they actually are making considerably less in terms of real dollars. It's dilution. So the $5 trillion that we printed, I would argue, is the primary source of inflation. You know, we can say, well, eggs went up because feed went up, fuel went up because there's a war in Ukraine. You can find a lot of excuses for various different industries. But what is the probability that every price went up all at the same time? You can't blame them on specific supply chain problems. The thing
how do you explain the global?
Yes, I'm glad you asked me that, Professor Raskin. Because they did the same thing in Europe. They did this everywhere. They printed their own equivalents of the Federal Reserve and treasuries, created their own money out of thin air. Mm-hmm. It may be the only thing that saved our dollar is that everybody else did the same thing to their currency. And so the question is, right now we're coming up on the debt limit. Why isn't anybody proposing to print more money? Why aren't the economists proposing to print more money? Because it is poison. When you print money, it is poison to our economy.
Like I said before, and like Massey is saying there, the problems are known, right? We know what is going on, and that's the first step of solving any issue. We have to be very fortified in our thoughts and thinking about how we move forward. We have to move forward full steam ahead and tackle these issues with courage. And we have to know that, hard choices have to be made. And that really brings me to today's question. Since we know what problems led us to why we voted for Trump, or most of us voted for Trump, we know the main culprits are illegal immigration in the millions and millions and wasteful government spending to where they can't even find $1 trillion. They just up and vanished, although it's probably in the hands of NGOs, to be honest with you. Since we know all those things and we know the problems now and we know how to fix them now, and we see Trump fixing them with the deportation stuff, we see it with the freezing of the asset stuff, do we turn our backs now? That was a long way to say that question, but do we turn our backs on what we actually voted for to fix the problem? Do we say to ourselves that, no, we want to fix the problem, but we want to do it with a smile on our faces? We want to feel like this moral high ground is ours. Ugly problems require tough solutions. One of my favorite quotes is that in order to beat monsters, you must become monsters. It's for the greater good that we do these things. It's for the greater good for especially our children, so they don't have to deal with this in 50 to 100 years. To do the hard things to make our country prosperous. And that's really what make America great again really means. It doesn't mean some kind of, hey, let's go back to Jim Crow. Any idiot who believes that is just being disingenuous. It means get us back to right principles so that we can move forward in prosperity for our people. And I think that's really what we need. Well, anyway, this has been The Right Angle, and I'll see you on the next one.